Who exactly the people you are going to help in this kind of projects?异国寻梦想，投资要设防。欢迎来到美财帮啊！今天我是主持人安主，但是今天这个阵仗大家也看到了，和以往有所不同啊，所以我简单的用1分钟，用中文介绍今天的到场嘉宾之后，我们会切换到英文模式啊，从我的右手边开始啊，这位是基诺啊，基诺呢，他不仅是这个美国领先的头部的这个1B5投资移民区域中心的投资者关系部的 Director， 同时他也是 ALC 的核心高管之一。等一下我们会邀请基诺先生做更详细的自我介绍这位是 Andy 其实我的英文名呢也是安主，所以今天为了区分，他就叫 Andy， 我就叫安主。待会儿我们切换到英文模式之后，我们会对安迪做一个更详细的介绍，同时也会邀请他做自我介绍
这是我们的重磅嘉宾。
重磅嘉宾，这是由我们这个节目自从开播以来最重磅的一位嘉宾，因为安迪曾经有过整整10年，从2013到2023年的美国移民局的1B5项目的首席合规官的经历一会儿我们详细介绍。左边这位是咱们的老朋友了KK。这个投行人美国的财富管理专家而且他也是1B5投资移民的受益者。
对，我们是老法投资人，15年前的。
好，
所以今天非常激动，能见到这个案子背后负责整个审核团队的这个
Andy 很有可能看过你们的案子。
对，真的很有可能，
没准就是那个签字官。
对，所以我很激动
好，那我们现在开始 switch 了。
可以，没问题。
好 ，So Andy, your professional record at the USCIS, which is the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, shows that was a full decade from 2013 to 2023. You served for a full decade. Immigrant investor is IPO, but it's not the IPO in Nasdaq.
Right.
Yeah. So how is this IPO called?
It's the Immigrant Investor Program Office.
Correct.
We use it IPO for short.
Right. So this office are responsible for overseeing the EB5, Immigrant Investor Program. And due to his outstanding performance, Andy was rapidly promoted to the Chief of IPO Compliance Division, which is the highest supervisory position overseeing compliance operations for the entire regional center industry. So, Andy, is there anything else you would like to add on?
I think it's important to point out also that the IPO Compliance Division is the only compliance division in USCIS. It's the only program that warrants that kind of oversight and that kind of integrity.
Right.
So is this compliance more on the project side or more on the investor source of funds side?
The compliance division definitely focused on regional centers. We used to call it the Regional Center Compliance Division, but as things grew, we learned that we also needed to be kind of looking at the program as a whole. So there were certainly some times where the compliance division would be asked to look at certain sources of funds, different fact patterns that investors had, but the vast majority of our time was spent checking on what regional centers were doing and trying to
protecting investors.
Right.
Protecting us.
No, absolutely. So that was the reason why the compliance division was created when the EB5 program was really growing in the early 2010s. We ran into a lot of regional centers that were committing bad acts, fraud, some speculation, and a lot of projects that were going bad, and investors were losing their money and losing their immigrant status. So we started the compliance team and then the compliance division with the express purpose of finding ways to stop regional centers that were engaging in that activity so that investors would not be harmed.
The UCCS regulation and compliance system for the EB5 industry under the Reform and Integrity Act, we call RIA, is very much rely on the imprint or contribution from Andy. So it drives the standard and the integrity of the EB5 projects still on the daily basis, right? So here is my first question to you today, okay? In your previous role in the USCIS, you used to work very closely with the federal law enforcement and the regulation agencies such as the SEC, the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, and even the FBI. Okay, so I can understand why you need to work with SEC because EB-5 is a private placement. However, I'm really curious. Why should you work with FBI? I'm kind of scared.
So there's not, I mean, if you're not doing anything wrong, there's nothing to be afraid of. I mean, that's the short version. But the SEC is focused on regulating securities, like investments generally throughout the United States. And while EB-5 investments are generally private placements, those are still governed and still controlled by the SEC. It's just there's a very limited set of rules for what private placements have to do. So when something would go bad in a regional center or some other EB-5 project, the SEC often had a lot of expertise and a lot of interest in what was going on. And so if there was a big case that involved a lot of fraud, a lot of money being stolen or moved around, the SEC was almost always involved. And I'd say most often when we were working with the SEC, they would be coming to IPO for our expertise on EB-5 in particular. Right. And then we would work together to pursue the bad guys, basically. When it comes to the FBI or other agencies such as Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, or Homeland Security Investigations, which is another part of the Department of Homeland Security, those would be more like criminal investigations where there might be actual fraud going on, where a regional center operator or somebody else involved in an EB-5 project was actually stealing money, lying to investors, or committing maybe immigration fraud where they were fabricating documents to get people green cards. That was the sort of thing where we'd be working with the big kind of mean law enforcement agencies. Working with SEC was always very professional. It was a lot of discussions about math. Mostly.
Thank you. So let's move on to Jilu for self-introduction. Then
Sure.
we come back to Andy. So Mr. Jilu, could you please give us a little bit further self-introduction?
Sure, no problem. Hi, my name is Gino Zhao. I've been with the ALC for over 12 years as the head of investor relations, and also I'm taking the responsibility of the rescue projects, which is one of the main topics that we're gonna talking about today. So, yeah, that's my basic intro.
Thank you very much. So today, this guest is a bit special, right? In his previous role, he decided whether the investors could stay or not. But in his current role, he helps people try to understand how to stay legally and in full compliance, right? So there are, however, I mean, in the marketplace, there are observations that the movement of as a former immigration officer move into a regional center. Mm-hmm. So it could create some improper influence. Yeah. So Mr. Andy, how do you personally distinguish in between the value of the experience and the boundaries of the influence?
So in terms of influence, it's very limited what I can do in order to change how USCIS looks at applications or petitions. The RIA, the law that was passed in 2022, includes requirements that if a regional center employee or agent reaches out to the IPO and has a discussion, IPO is required to document all those conversations and publish any information that was shared. So they call those the communications protocols. And so that really creates this kind of caution between IPO talking to somebody like me, or really anybody in the regional center industry. The idea is you don't want to create this air of unfairness, that I, because I'm friends with people who still work at IPO, that I should get special information or treatment, as opposed to another regional center that doesn't have that background. And so that's something that I take very seriously. And in fact, I can say, and this is kind of painful to say, I have not talked to some of my very good friends in like 6 or 7 months since I started this job, because I don't want them to be in a position where their job in the government might be challenged because they might be perceived as giving me favoritism. So we exchange very short texts like, happy birthday, and I get thanks in return, because if I veer off into a discussion about work, my friend at IPO could get in trouble.
So one further question is that after making this transition, what has been the hardest part for you to adapt?
So that is definitely one of the hardest parts. And related to that, the experience of my friends at IPO, the people who do this work now, who I worked with for a decade, I can't sit down and have those, interesting policy conversations. I can't say like, hey, what would you do with this? Because that's very much how we grew IPO. It was a bunch of very dedicated, very smart adjudicators, policymakers, and investigators sitting around trying to figure out the complex cases. We would all crowd into each other's cubicles and say, hey, I got a case like this. What'd you do with it? Oh, what would you do? And I can't have those conversations with half of that group because they're behind that wall. I am lucky, however, because at ALC, we've hired two of my former colleagues. So Chris Mason, our chief communications officer, and Gary Merson, our executive vice president, are people that I work with in the government, and we would have those conversations all the time. So
that's really rare in the industry, like joining the regional center.
Right.
What's your consideration back then when you make the decision?
So making decisions is really, it's a function of understanding the law and then looking at the evidence, the documents that are provided in each case, and trying to do that fairly and consistently. Every case is different. I mean, that's kind of the mantra. Every case is unique, and you can't really assume that when you open a case that it comes from a particular regional center, or it has a particular attorney, or a certain pattern of source of funds. You can't assume you're going to approve or deny that right out of the box. You really have to spend time looking at the facts and making a decision. And so when it comes to making those decisions, it just comes down to training and experience. If you look at enough cases, you have a good body of information to figure out whether this loan is good enough, whether this business plan is credible. And for me, after doing that for several years, I became kind of the go-to person for all the complex questions. So once I had developed all that experience, my boss used to call me the explainer-in-chief. So I was the guy that whenever ICE or the FBI or SEC came and asked questions like, what's EB-5? What do we do? They'd be like, just ask Andy. Here, take him. We don't want him. And you said earlier that I got a lot of my my promotions as a supervisor and as a acting director or division chief through my experience. It was really because I would not stop asking questions. They just wanted to get rid of me, and so I kept moving up. But it paid off. And so to the earlier question, you said how does your experience and influence balance? The experience is what is key for ALC. The reason that I was hired was not because I know everybody at IPO. It's because of the experience I bring in really understanding this program from the inside and knowing how adjudicators think, knowing how the policies are made, and why everything is the way it is. From the outside, you never really understand the why. USCIS is really bad at telling anybody anything. They never have stakeholder engagements. They don't share information the way they used to. And so for me, having that direct experience and being able to share it with ALC and with other regional center partners and lawyers and friends, we're trying to really just make sure that this industry is as good as it can be. Not just for ALC, but for everyone involved, for the investors, for our legal partners, for our broker-dealer partners, agents, and even other regional centers. Because this is a program that will really only succeed and be successful if we're all doing it together.
As a former policymaker, so I'm going to give you a very tough one, okay?
Oh.
So if we look back on your past decisions, is there anything you would have done differently?
That is a really hard question. I like to think no. And the reason
Very
is...
confident, eh?
No. So I'm not confident, and I'll tell you why in a minute. I really built my career, and the reason I moved into the compliance sphere is because I hold personal and professional integrity very, very highly. I think if you're not doing things right, you shouldn't do them at all. Right. Now, let me qualify that a little. There's certainly something to be gained from, if you don't know how to do something, to try it out and get it wrong a couple times to learn from it, but always being open and honest and transparent about when you're making those mistakes, that they are mistakes and you're going to fix them. So I've certainly made mistakes in my career, and there's certainly some cases that when I approved them, I wasn't 100% sure, but that's kind of the beauty of the system. You don't have to be 100% sure when you're making decisions. You have to meet preponderance. Preponderance is this legal standard. You told me not to, this isn't academic, so I'm going to try to keep it short. But preponderance means that whatever documents you're looking at, it has to be more likely than not that it's true. And so if an investor is showing me a source of funds and they have a loan document, and maybe it's not 100% perfect, but it seems to be, from a proper lending institution, it's for the right amount of money, the conversion rates are good, the translation document is good, then if the loan isn't like the most formal one that I'm used to seeing, 30 pages from a bank, I can still believe that it's an honest document if it is more likely than not good enough. And the way that I used to describe preponderance, and this is where I'll bring it back to being less academic, was that it's not 51%. It's 50%. That's that much more. So going back to the original question, are there any cases that I thought I did wrong? No. At the time, definitely not.
No regret.
No. But
would that be too, some case maybe too straight? Probably.
like they were too good?
No.
What do you mean?
Maybe over-regulated, something like.
So that's where I think when you ask if I have no regrets, I don't know if there are regrets exactly, but there are always like questions. So somebody like me, being from compliance, my whole job is to ask questions and ask hard questions. And so I do that with myself as well. I think integrity is all about self-examination and mindfulness and being aware of yourself and your actions. But I certainly think that as a program, as an office, IPO could have done things differently. I think that we could have had more discussions with the stakeholder community and come up with more even ways to approach complex problems that would have reduced lawsuits and maybe just made everybody happier. But the way the government's structured, the way that this community pursues problems isn't always that easy. And so while there are things we could have done differently, I don't think I have any regrets over how I performed in that space.
Very good. That's very confident. I'd like you to take a deep breath, okay? Drink some water. Mr. Juno, now you have the floor, okay? My first question to you. Okay, first of all, could you please give us a very brief introduction about the rescue project and how it works?
Sure. We actually built up this concept back in 2025, somewhere like June or July. But actually, before we realized we need to do that, we worked with the law firms. We did something for the petitioners, and we did the similar stuff as a rescue project, the way it has been created later. So we successfully helped investors to get their permanent residency, even if they had some troubled project or bad experience on the previous project. So at the time we created this concept back in 2025, so we realized that we could make this thing more formally. So we just put this type of concept onto the certain projects. So our first rescue project was the 106, which is a gold hotel in Nebraska.
Yeah, I still remember that.
Right.
How does it work?
But this project is pretty good. Actually, we've been cooperated with the developer for more than 2 projects. We had one project in Nebraska, one in Colorado, and when we talk with the developer, we realized this new project can be used as the rescue projects because the construction was nearly done, and then the jobs were almost created, like completely. So we decided to develop this project to rescue project, but we didn't mean for money. We didn't want to make benefits because this type of project doesn't give us like,
That would be my next question.
doesn't give us like pretty good benefits, good return. We did that because we want to help other people. We see there are a lot of troubled investors in this market, and we see their and suffer. They
Who exactly the people you are going to help in this kind of projects?
just the troubled investors who, well, they had investment back in the pre-RA program, but the project could not create enough jobs, so that makes them very hard to get the permanent residency through the I-829, the last stage.
So are you saying that they already got the approval for the first stage?
Yes, they already got I-526 approval, or they already got the conditional green card, or even they already filed I-829 petition. So
It's just that the conditional green card cannot transfer into permanent green card because the job was not created.
Exactly. So they knew that this project did not create enough jobs, so they cannot get the final step. They cannot get conditional green.
Could you please give us a good reckon? Could you please give us a roughly idea that, I mean, in the marketplace, just a roughly idea, how large is the affected population will be?
Oh, I think it would be pretty big sector of the total investors in the market. For example, there's a troubled a project in New York. It's called Emerald. You know, you know that, right?
Oh, that was 900 people, right?
Yeah,
lot.
almost. I would say 6 or 7, something. And there's another one from South Florida. I'm not going to mention the name again, but it has over 450 investors in that project. So for this type of project, one investor got issued. That means the almost entire group of the investor, you know, they're facing the same issue.
What's the best timing for those investors to try to find rescue projects to get rescued? Is it like a timing difference?
Right. Well, actually, in September 2025, there's another issue came, which is RC termination. The regional termination notice. A lot of investors received those notice. You know,
Their previous regional center, not just the projects got problem, it's even the regional center closed.
yes. So once they know their regional center is closing down, they have 3 options. First, if you know the project is running well, you don't have to do anything. You just reply to the USCIS that you know I'm going to keep on going on this project. And the second one is if you have a new investor sponsorship, just submit it as the replacement. And the third one, you're going to move from your old NCE to a new NCE, and then use the new JCE's job creation to accomplish your job creation. That way you can get your final step, the permanent resident card.
Suppose if I was a victim, I mean, as soon as I realized that my regional center
Cannot create.
is already shut down or terminated, what's the first thing I have to do, and what is my top priority?
So I would say you're gonna talk to your attorney first. Yeah, definitely. Always talk to the
100%.
attorney.
Always talk to the attorney first.
Yeah, and then see what the attorney say. I know there are people like coming to us or come to our broker dealer like you guys or some of our cooperating agents. I would always give them suggestions that talk to your attorney first and then know the current situation. And then if you're really interested into our projects, then we can share the documents through our partners.
But just in case, if the original regional center is not shut down, is still operating. However, if that particular project is defined that they cannot create enough employment, for this kind of customers or clients, can they join this kind of rescue project?
Yes, they still can, but
even the regional center is still there.
Yes, but there are like certain requirements.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong. They have to get the conditional green card first.
Oh.
Yeah. If they didn't get the CPR, they may not able to.
That's the simple way of saying it. Yeah.
Yeah.
The key to understanding rescue project status is kind of understanding where the investor is in the process. So if an investor has received one of these termination notices from USCIS because their regional center was shut down, as Gino said, based on whether the project is successful or not, there are different options that the investor can take, and those are laid out in the termination notice. That's, again, something you want to talk to your attorney about. If you're just in a bad project, but your regional center is still operating or not terminated or in good standing, whatever you want to call it, then you're limited to what they call the material change problem. And so that's a very legal sort of thing, but what it means is you can't really change too much about your status without losing it. And so if you are in conditional permanent resident status, if you have your temporary green card, your 2-year green card, you are then allowed to take advantage of changes in your NCE, in your project, in your investment, as long as you meet the eligibility requirements when you file your 829. So when you're filing that removal of conditions later on, as long as you meet all the qualifications then, lots of things could have changed. So the business that you originally invested in could have gone bankrupt and gone away, but then you were able to invest in a good NCE, then that one should give you the eligibility you need to continue your immigration journey. Problem is, if you haven't gotten your conditional permanent resident card, all those changes before you've come to the United States can cancel your status.
It's caused a material change.
It's called material change. If there's something that's significant that happens to your project, like it fails, it just shuts down, goes bankrupt, or...
Then I'm like all doomed, like I cannot do anything.
Right.
Probably just failed.
Right.
And that's just the limitations of the law. The law doesn't really
Cover everything.
You're right. It doesn't cover all these situations. It's something that might change in the future, but right now, essentially, if your regional center shuts down and you haven't yet gotten your conditional green card, you're in danger of losing your status.
Yep.
But from a compliance standpoint, after a regional center has been terminated, what kind of risks, normally the investors the most often underestimate?
I think once your regional center has been terminated, most investors are not underestimating risks at all. I think they're overestimating them, because often you're in a position where your regional center shut down, maybe your project is not moving forward, you've lost money, the entire investment that you put in the original investment might be gone. And so now you're in a position where you have to find a new project, a new NCE in a very short period of time. I think the termination notices give you 6 months,
days.
180 days, so almost 6 months.
Yeah.
And you have to make a decision in that very short period of time of whether to invest in a new project and then how you're going to get the investment money.
And the new project has to be able to create job in a very short period of time.
Right, or it needs to be able to meet your eligibility requirements before your case is adjudicated by USCIS.
So that means not every case can turn into a rescue case. There are like very strict standard when you're trying to decide which case you're gonna put it as a rescue.
That's why when we look for certain rescue projects, our first point is the construction has to be, over halfly done or almost done completely. That'll make sure the job creation is there. We don't want to put the troubled investor into the same situation one more time. Right. So, yeah.
Make them feel secure.
Yes.
Right.
Because they have already been hurt once.
Yes.
They don't want to get hurt another
Double
time.
hurted.
That's precisely it. And that's why I say they kind of overestimate the risks. Now, that's not to say that there aren't any risks, or to say that, oh, no, it's fine, just go find a regional center and they'll be fine. What I mean is they're going to be very, very cautious to engage in another project. And the key is really for us, for the regional center operators, to assure the investor that the projects that we're promoting are safe, that they are going to help them meet their requirements. We can't guarantee anything. Anything could happen.
Exactly.
But as Gino said, we're trying to pick the safest projects we can.
Yep.
Things where the job creation is all or mostly done, where construction is underway or nearly complete, where we're confident that those projects are going to do what the investor needs. Because what we're asking of them is a very high burden. It's a whole additional investment or a nearly complete investment in order to meet these qualifications. And again, they have to do this in a very, very short period of time. So it's on us to establish that trust and to assure the investor that we're doing everything we can to make sure that they can best meet those eligibility requirements.
Andy actually made this concept right before the RC termination. So when we see the RC termination, I was like, oh yeah, Andy was right.